All right. So this is going to be pretty informal. Obviously, feel free to speed up the video playback and everything, and just ignore any background sounds. It might be my dogs. So the first thing I want to do is just look at the basic setup I have. So my decks and deck settings, because I think this could work. This definitely works for me and could work for other people. It's a good way of sort of organizing your cards and making sure they come in the right order. Okay, sorry. Okay. All right. So once this goes, okay. So the first thing I kind of want to look at is how I have my decks arranged. So ignore most of these because they won't really apply. But this one's going to be this M1 year is going to be the Saporito deck, the pre-made cards. So that's where all those are, and you can tell. Actually, there's a bit of an error here because there aren't any cards do. These aren't supposed to be in there, I guess, these three. But so what I did was create another deck just for this Foundations. And what I'm doing is moving, unsuspending, and then moving the relevant cards from the Saporito deck to there. And I think what that does best is that the cards then in the Saporito deck, the new cards are entered randomly, whereas if you just use the Saporito deck and unsuspend the cards, they go in by order of which deck they're in, which sub deck they're in. So if you've kind of been confused about why certain cards are popping up more often than others, that could be the reason. So we can see in this Foundations 2 deck um, that if we go to Browse, basically these are all random. All of these cards are random, randomly distributed throughout here, and they'll pop up randomly. So they're not organized into subdecks. Okay, so that's what I did. So you want to just go and come down here and say create new deck. Click on that and name it whatever you want for your Foundations, or you could do, you know, whatever your M1 year, however you want to do it. I just have it so that it's for the current Foundations, and I can move whatever I want over to the new Foundations as well when that starts. Okay, so the second thing I want to look at, well, so my settings as well we can do. Um, all right, so my deck settings are like this, and this is just from a website that I got. Ignore the limits and everything. I just do that on occasion to see. Sometimes I'll set limits on the cards. Sometimes I won't. It's up to you. I mean, you can set to get 100 new cards a day or whatever, and then just be done. Or you can set that your new cards are just kind of there, and you try to get as many done as possible, et cetera, et cetera. And so I have new cards coming up in 15 minutes, 1 day, and 3 days, right? So that's for the again an interval, the good interval, the easy interval, I think, and then my graduating interval is 6. Easy interval 8. You don't really need to know, I mean, about all this stuff. Obviously, it's not, unless you're interested in kind of optimizing that. There's a lot of videos out there on your settings. My insertion order I put in is random, and that's pretty crucial because you want it to. You don't want to. I mean, at least for me, I don't want the cards to insert as the oldest. The new cards to come up as the oldest new cards first. I want them to just come up randomly, because that way they won't be kind of ordered by topic, and they'll kind of comprise everything that is going to be on the test. So then lapses, you can see down here, you can just copy these over. You want to do tag only for leech action, because if you keep getting a card wrong, you don't want to automatically suspend it, which is what that's going to do if you say suspend card. And so you want to just tag it, and that it will tag that card and put it in a special area if you keep getting that card wrong. I think it's like at least 6 times. I put my maximum answer at an hour just so that by accident, if I leave it, it won't get rid of that card. Bury new siblings. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but sibling cards, right, are just closed deletions from the same card. So if you have a card that has 2 closed deletions, if you get a new card, you will um, the sibling might come up of that. So you get a new card with 1 closed deletion, or sorry, with two cloze deletions, one card comes up with the one cloze deletion, and then in that same session, you could get the other card that comes up with the other cloze deletion. So those two are siblings, right? But if you bury new siblings, what will happen is if the one card comes up, it'll save the other cloze, the related cloze card for the next day. Same with review siblings. Sometimes you might want to put one off and one on, or both off. It's totally up to you. You can mess around with it and see. Audio, add-ons. Okay, so all this other stuff, advanced, you can pause and copy this if you want to, but I think that's it's default. So we're just going to save. Okay. And then sort of the last intro thing is add-ons. And I think this is pretty crucial for me. I like the add-ons that I have. And so I think they work pretty well, and I'll be using most of them in my editing. So the ones that are at least crucial to my editing process, not Anki Hub, not Anki Simulator, not these. Okay, this one's a kind of interesting one because it might not work on certain versions. I believe the newest version of Anki, and this thing called cloze overlapper for Anki 2.1. It's supposed to be, I think. Works on it. I have just heard, I guess, from some people that it doesn't work on their computers, but it's something to try. It's not all super useful, but it's like a really crucial tool, I think, for some processes, and we'll see that a bit later when I show how it works. But it's especially really good for memorizing pathways and ordered lists. And again, if you don't know how to get add-ons, it's pretty easy. You just go up here to this top thing that says get add-ons. If you don't know the code for your add-on, which you probably won't at first, you go to browse add-ons, and then this will take you pretty much everywhere. It kind of sucks that there's not a search, but I just do the Control F or whatever to search because they're all listed here. And so if you search cloze overlapper, for instance, so I'll do Control F, cloze over, yeah, there it is. So it comes up here, and yeah, it was updated in 2021, so it should work for some people, but again, it's not totally crucial. The next one I use is the image editor. This is different from Image-occlusion. So we'll see that in a little bit. Image-occlusion, right? That's definitely pretty crucial, especially as a visual learner. I really like to use visual cards, and a lot of the Saporio cards do have image-occlusions, but not as many as I would like. And I have a specific method that I really use to get as much sort of visual as I can. And I find that, again, the more I look at diagrams and visualize them and try to hide what's there and guess what's at different points, the more I can sort of recall that visual in the test and put that visual into practical application. Another one is called image resizer. Not crazy important, but there might be some times where you could use it. So we may talk about that. It's just that, if you have an image that you want to put in and it's sort of blurry maybe because it's too big, like it's not great quality, then you can size it down and put it in, or obviously the opposite's the case. If you have an image that's really detailed and really big, if it inserts as too small, you can go into the image resizer, resize the image, and that should work for you. So not too important. These other ones aren't important necessarily. I use symbols because that allows you to add Greek symbols, arrows. Let's see. There's other things that the symbols use, which hopefully we'll see when I open them. So symbols I really like just because it just adds that element where you can add sort of as much customizable text as you want. So that's pretty much their true retention. Don't worry about that. That's pretty much all I have for add-ons. All these other ones are disabled. And so doesn't mean there aren't other important add-ons, or other add-ons you might want to use, but that's what I use. So now the first sort of thing that we're going to look through is the workflow, right? How I typically like to do this. So just for the sake of going through the video, I'll sort of literally go through each thing uh, and and just kind of pretend as though I'm working through it. So the first thing I would do, right, which I did, so I would have done this last night, right, is read and highlight the relevant learning guide before the next lecture. I mean, this isn't, if your week is swamped or whatever, this is probably one of the less important things. But it's probably just good to get a first pass of everything, just so you know the kind of content you're going to be responsible for, and the stuff that the lecture is supposed to cover. So you get preview to the ideas, and then that's going to help for this second step, right? So that once you read the learning guide, so the lecture that I'm going to be doing is, let me see, is the yeah, it's the next one on here. So it's actually this. It's this one. So this pharmacokinetics, drug metabolism, or drug transport, I think. Either that or metabolism one. We'll see when I actually get to it in a second. Um, then what I'll do is browse the cards, right, and sort of check my understanding from the learning guide, look at figures, right, see if the transporters and everything make sense, terms, blah blah blah. Okay, and I would be recognizing things from the learning guide, and so how I'm doing this, obviously you can't really see my remote, but it's just a little quick thing. You go to browse in the deck, right? So let me walk back through it. So you go into the deck, you go to browse. Over here on the side is everything in the current deck, right? So I have a lot of stuff going on, but basically, so ignore all these other decks. These are just the decks from that original screen. Here's that M1 year deck, the Saporito cards, right? So you do the drop down menu. We're in block 2. I could just delete all these, I think, because I have them, but um, and then what I do is delete the decks. So these won't be the same necessarily. These aren't all the decks in the Saporito deck for this foundation. So I'll delete the decks as I move them into my Foundations 2 deck. So we'll see how we do that when we get to it. But again, so I just go into the relevant deck on the side, and when you click on a deck, the only things that'll show up in here are the things in that deck. And so then I make sure that I'm scrolled all the way up here on the side, on the right side, go in, and then I just press my down arrow, right? You don't have to go click through each card. You press the down arrow, that's going to take you through, right? And obviously you can see if there's 3 closed deletions here, or 4, there's 4 cards that match that'll come up. So anyway, I'm looking at figures, terms, uh, things, language in the cards, and just kind of seeing if it all makes sense, or just at a first pass level, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, a few cards. Oh, these are where those 3 are coming from. So, um, uh, not too many cards. That is kind of signaling to me that maybe if I notice in this lecture that it's a kind of less surface level lecture, less details, sort of a more broad overview, that kind of matches, right? There's not as many cards here. It might be a more overview type lecture. Okay, cool. So then the next step is the easiest out of all of them, but perhaps the hardest in a lot of ways, is that I watch or attend, or attend the lecture and just pay attention, taking minimal or no notes. And at least for me, I just have always found this has worked. If you like to take notes just to get that sense of writing or whatever in your memory, I guess that's fine. But I just find that just watching it and just trying to absorb the information, because with the power of Anki is that that whatever you put in there, you're going to be able to memorize. And so you don't have to worry about the lecture passing you by in some sense, even if you attend in person and can't rewind it. If you're just sitting there paying attention, that as long as you get all the Anki content in there, you'll get it into your brain. So I just try to watch the lecture and pay attention, taking minimal or no notes. And so what I'll do is kind of go to that. We'll transition to the next thing after I actually watch the lecture. Okay, so I just watched the lecture, and the lecture that I just watched was Drug Metabolism 1. And so, right, so that's this third step. And so what I'd like to do then is we're going to focus here I like to just pull up a bunch of resources, right? So the first thing, obviously, we're going to do is pull up the Anki deck. And, some people might just want to go straight into review, but, again, this is just my particular workflow. So yeah, let me just show that again. Sorry. So browse, whoops. So I go over into decks, right? Open up M1 year and down. And you can also just do this, and you can do all these like pathways in browse too. But right, so metabolism 1, it says I finished the deck because they're all suspended, right? Meaning yellow over here. And we'll talk about unsuspending them here in a second. We're not going to worry about that at the moment. But right, so now all those cards are selected. We can just kind of check that by going over here and just making sure this is the correct subdeck is highlighted. Right, so now I've already browsed these, and then having watched the lecture again, all these things make even more sense. So looks good so far. We're going to go through them in more detail though. But the other thing I like to pull up, right? So you can see here, right? Anki slides and learning guide. So I'll pull up the slides, and then I think actually importantly, an underused tool is e-text. So because I love visuals and diagrams, right? I'll usually scroll through a textbook. To find diagrams relevant to the lecture material and make image occlusions out of them, or use the images as like for the extra field or whatever. If it turns out, right, those image occlusions aren't needed, or like they're too easy or whatever, you can just delete them, right, as you review. I think it's always better to make more cards than fewer, because it's easier to just delete cards while you're reviewing. Literally, the card comes up, you press Control Delete on a PC, Command Delete on a Mac, and they'll be deleted as you're reviewing. Or you can suspend them by hitting Command J / Control J. But anyway, that's for another time. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to pull up, let's see, so I pull that up. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the slides. So obviously feel free to skip forward here, but just for the sake of thoroughness, I'm just going to go in, all right, get the slides. And we know that the lecture, the numbers don't match up necessarily to the deck. But that's fine. So here are the slides. Okay. Open them on PowerPoint. Sometimes I like to convert them to a PDF, but honestly, it's kind of just more of a hassle sometimes. So cool. And whether if the professor uses figures that you think are sufficient, that can probably be good in their PowerPoints. But if not, sometimes, I don't know, things aren't as easy to image occlude, or textbooks like really work on making images and figures and stuff more clear, right? So that can sometimes, that's why I sometimes like to prefer the textbook. A nice little sort of trick or whatever, I guess, just tip, is that if you're like looking for a relevant textbook, they'll put it often in the learning guides, and they'll be available online. So if you don't know how to do this, I'll just show it. But I have the textbook thing saved here, bookmarked. So if you haven't set this up already, definitely do so, because it's like a huge resource. So you go to the Galter Library website, right, and you have to use the VPN. I believe, if you're not, actually, no, I don't think you have to. I think you can just go to, you go over to popular resources, and you go to ebook collections, and I use Access Medicine. There are others, but for me, I honestly think Access Medicine is the best, right? So you would click on that, and we'll just do that. Right, so that takes you here. And then I just bookmark this page so that it's up. This will give you literally every single textbook. The one that I like to use, at least for pharmacology, is this Goodman and Gilman's. I really like to just go through and kind of look at figures and everything. And some textbooks have really, really good figures. And as a visual learner, I think that really helps. So let's go to general principles. You can search, but if you just kind of know, right, how to navigate the contents, that can work. And again, he has the section in here, right? Chapter 6 of Goodman and Gilman. And so, right, we know that that's the relevant chapter. And of course, right, drug metabolism was the lecture I watched. So then what I like to do is I really like the way this website's organized because you can either download a PDF of the chapter or I just like to go to figures because I know that I'm not going to really get anything from the text. Maybe besides like maybe I could literally you could make cards out of like these if you wanted to. That would be I mean kind of interesting, but maybe not super helpful. Um, but instead of now searching through the whole thing and having to search through blocks of text, really the only reason you would want the textbook, besides like getting more clarity of information for like learning purposes, right? All you want is usually the figures, right? So luckily, typically they'll have this figures section, and you can just find all the figures in that chapter. And you can see these are like a lot of these are going to be perfect for image occlusions or other things. I mean, some of them might not be so useful, but I really like these because again, they provide a method of recall for me and repetition that I find comes back on the test pretty easily, right? So again, I like to just scroll through before I even get into the Anki cards because sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, that thing on the Anki card, right? That text corresponds really interestingly to a figure that I saw, and so I want to put that in, um, or whatever. So I won't start making image occlusion cards now because I don't really remember what's in the deck. But at least I know that all these things are here, right? And I'm recognizing some of these things from the lecture, right? SIP and UGT and all these things. So, and this figure was in the PowerPoint as well. So, full disclosure, I've already actually image occluded this picture, so I won't be doing that for this lecture, but some of these others definitely. All right, so that's another thing. So I have the slides, a textbook, and the cards. I think I have the slides. Oh yeah. Okay, so they're here. So I'll just keep those both up. Okay, so those are up, and now what I'll do is literally just browse the cards, right? Adding and editing, making to pay special attention to, different modes of learning, correcting things that might bother you in the card, or formatting them in the right way. So I do want to make sure I hit all three of these things: image occlusion, diagram blanking, overlapping cloze, and then some of the things that you can do while editing as well, or while reviewing rather. So here's what I just like to do, right? Just go through the first one, right? Okay, that's fine. Main goal of metabolism. So I'm not going to go through all these. I just want to kind of peruse and take you through it in real time. I haven't like pre-prepared this because I don't want anything to go by the wayside because I've like pre-prepared something and skipped over. So let me just read through a couple of these and hopefully we can hit kind of one example of each kind of edit I like to make. So main goal of metabolism is to make molecules more polar so that they can be excreted. Okay. Um, so I don't really like this cloze format. This is kind of a good example, right? Uh, so something I might do is, it's not really that useful for me to say, well, let me imagine this card without this cloze, right? The main goal of what is to make molecules more polar so they can be excreted. Metabolism, right? Are they really going to ask me, to recall what so, I mean, something to kind of give me an overview, right? I might go ahead and just delete this cloze. And again, it might be helpful to get a refresher on exactly what cloze deletions are. You can do them manually, or you can do them, with these things and these shortcuts that we'll see here in a second. So I'll show you how we do it. But what I'm doing when I delete the cloze, right, is just deleting all this stuff around the term, and that will make it so that it doesn't come up. So what I might say here is something like, you know, overall goal of drug metabolism, right? So I'm getting like this 30,000 foot view, and this might be a card I might end up deleting later, because it's kind of just it's kind of surface level and something that it will probably be annoying to like just keep coming up. But for now, we'll just keep it in there, right? So overall goal, right, of drug metabolism. And again, the reason why I added drug there is just because and this is what I think just differentiates more. I'm not trying to bash these cards by any means, but like something that makes cards more or less applicable or more or less clear, right, is what they mean to you. So for me, if I just got a random card that said overall goal of metabolism, I wouldn't know what it was talking about, right? I wouldn't know that it was talking about drug metabolism. I might think it was talking about metabolism of carbohydrates, right? So you just want to make it more specific because you have to think about helping yourself sort of later. And I like to think of that as just like helping a colleague, right? A future version of me. So making it more clear will make that we'll just kind of make it easier. Um, so like right, 30,000 foot goal of drug metabolism, right? Overall goal to make molecules more polar so that they can be excreted. Now, I don't think you need these specific words closed out. Honestly, I think if you see this card, even if you forget what you kind of wanted to say for this card, once it pops up and you see it while you're reviewing, you might be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like I'm keeping this big picture in my head of the overall goal, right? So what I just did there, sorry, that was kind of quick, is I'm keeping this, right? So this is what's going to appear on the card. And then let me get rid of these. So this is the answer I want to close out, right? That I want to be sort of hidden from me so that I can answer it. So I just highlighted the whole thing. You can go up here to, I think it's, yeah, so it's this one, right? Close deletion, or you do control, I just do control, oh yeah, control shift C, right? Control shift C. It might be command shift C on a Mac. I'm not sure if you have it. Just hover over the close deletion thing and you'll see it. Now, another cool thing you can do from this view is to preview the card, right? So that you know, oh shoot, sorry. So I deleted the close 2, right? So importantly, this is close 1 now. So you didn't, it would show up as mistaken. So just make sure you're on the right card for the preview. Right, so there we go. Okay, overall goal of drug metabolism. Now I can just blow through that card and say like, okay, making molecules more polar so they can be excreted. I have that in my head and can go on to the more kind of specific things. You know what I mean? So that's just something I like to do. I don't think it's that useful to close out individual words unless they're terms that are important to understand in their context, right? I think it's better to keep more sort of information out or hidden than otherwise. Okay, so like this, right? So glucuronidation. I don't know what the spelling is here, but I'm pretty sure this is just supposed to be like that. Yeah, glucuronidation. Okay, yeah, right. Unless this is misspelled. But anyway, now, okay, so this is a good example of this second type of card that I would make. Now, this is a really interesting tip I think that a lot of people don't know. But what you can do with a closed deletion is give yourself a prompt, right? So when you see this preview, right, this card is going to come up and say glucuronidation requires what? Well, that's kind of vague, right? I mean, because if you're looking right here at the process, it requires this enzyme, right? This UGT. It requires, right? Well, it seems to require this, alcohol group, right? This hydroxyl group to happen, right? It seems to. So you don't really know, and then when you go to the second card, right? You can also kind of anticipate that it'll say blank requires UDP glucuronic acid. Well, I don't know. Maybe are they talking about a drug? Are they talking about an enzyme? Like, what are they talking about? So, again, and by doing this, I'm not trying to bash these cards, but I think just to make it more clear to yourself, your future self later, this could be edited. So, I don't really think you have to do all that much here, but what you can do to give yourself a prompt, and we'll show this here in the preview, is that you can say, okay, uh, so this will be like, what I'll say is this is going to be like a process, right? And so I'm going to put 2 colons right here after the term. And whatever is within this close, right, within these brackets after those 2 colons is going to show up as the prompt, right? So I want to say that some process you can put a question mark, you can put whatever. You can put full sentences with spaces, everything, as long as it's behind these 2 colons. And so now what's going to come up, right? Let's see, is that a specific process requires UDP glucuronic acid. If I wanted to say here, so if I wanted to change it and say this is an enzyme, right? I could say, oh, cool. So I know that UBP glucuronidase transferase is going to require this acid, and of course I would have to change it, right, to UGT. But for now, I'm going to keep it the same, glucuronidation, and it's this process, right? So now I know it's a process. I know it's going to be or this is kind of hinting me to the right answer without giving it away, right? It's just making it more clear, so you're not frustrated by like, what was this card trying to ask me? And then again over here, I still, even if I have, so I have this cloze, right? Okay, so this comes up still like this, right? Glucuronidation requires, okay, well, I don't know. I still don't know what it's asking for. So, right, we're going to put this, oops, this is the substrate, right? And so, or you can put whatever makes sense for you to put there. It requires what substrate, right? So that's a really cool tip that I actually just recently learned. So something that is useful for me is that I'll organize the cards by their type, right? And if I see, so you go up here, right, and there's this, you just click the card, and it'll organize them. Usually putting the image occlusion cards, right, these IO. On the top, and then I think if you click it again, it'll put them on the bottom. But they'll all be in one place. That way, I can see, because I really like image occlusion cards, I can see which ones are in there. And so you can see going through all of them, it's really just this diagram, right, that's being image occluded, and so that you're really trying to learn, right, these phase two reactions by virtue of this diagram here. So that's fine, but there might be some other things that I want to image occlude and that I know aren't included in here, right? So something that I'll do is go ahead and use my textbook, get some of the diagrams here. So it's just being really slow. Okay, so let's see, right? This is what was used for that previous diagram. All right, so let's look at this. So for me, taking something like this diagram with these phases and the relevant enzymes gives me a nice visual for the reactions we're supposed to learn. And so what I'll do is go over here to view full size, view large, and here's a really sort of easy tip for importing images into Anki. So what I do is I like to take a screenshot and just figure out how to this I only know this shortcut for PC, but I'm sure you could look this up for Mac as well. What you want to do is take a screenshot that is put directly onto your clipboard, right? So that it automatically copies the screenshot instead of saving it as a photo. And so I know on Windows, this is the Windows button, Shift S, okay? And that pulls up like this thing, and that allows me to literally just go like this. Grab this. You could grab the source. That's probably more like ethical or whatever, but just to be, you know, you will grab that and you'll see it did nothing with it, or it appears to have done nothing with it. But that all it did was copy that screenshot onto the clipboard. And then a really, really cool thing that you can do is just go to Anki. And I'm just going to add this directly. I'm going to add this card directly into the deck that I'm using, right? So that's this Foundations 2 deck. And I'm going to add, it already came up as image occlusion, but it doesn't actually matter what card this is. If you have like the default card as cloze, you actually just go right over here to this button, add image occlusion, or press Control Shift O. Conveniently enough, what's copied onto your clipboard as a photo, whether you left clicked it, whether you screenshot it and copied it directly to your clipboard, whatever is on there will actually pop up, right? So you can left click stuff and save image, or screenshot it, right? Obviously, if you want, is smaller. The kind of bad thing about image occlusion, I think, and I don't know every little tip and trick about this, I'm pretty sure you can't edit images within them, like crop them and stuff. So that's why it's just kind of easier to get the screenshot and then import the image. So so what I'll typically do here, right, is say, you know, and I'm being very sort of custom, like sort of specific to me here because I think like I'll know sort of what this diagram is asking. But if you have to put prompts in there, I'll kind of show you how to do that as well. So what I'll do is grab this rectangle, right? And you can see that you just take it and you can blank things out. And it will automatically make a card for that. And then because there's also good tutorials on image occlusion, so this is going to be very simple. But what I'm going to do for this first card, right, is I want to just remember that these are like the different phases or whatever. Like obviously this will be a card maybe I could just see like once and be like, okay, yeah, sure, that gives me like a good visual for remembering on the test. Um, but so what I'll do is then um, select both of these. So I just selected one, clicked on one, press shift and oops, yep, press shift. Sometimes it's weird, and selected the other. And then you can say group elements. So I floated over this. This is group, or you can right click and group them. And that will then make it so that both of these are going to be on the same card, right? And so if I want to say, here I'm asking for phase, right? Okay. So I just went to this text thing, right? Clicked over here, added a text box. You can change the font and everything up here. So what I'm going to do is this is already selected. I'm going to copy it. So Control C, Control V. I copied it, paste it down here. I'm going to select this. So these are both selected now. I'm going to now select my group and group all four of them together. Right. So now that's like kind of giving me that prompt. Over here, I'm going to, now this is going to be sort of obviously like a little harder card, right? Because it's sort of asking you to guess what happened between these different phases, given given the groups that are on it. This is kind of a weird little like glitch. When you've put text in, because the text comes in as black, it's going to just make the next elements black, including the card. So, I mean, what you can just do then is click on it, and you can make these obviously whatever color you want, but right then you have this yellow over here that's kind of the default, and just make them yellow. So now what I'm going to do, right, is take my text again, just click, that'll make a thing, right, and then you'll put something like enzyme family here. Okay, so oh whoops, I'm going to copy that. Okay, so you could then do this for, so I grouped all four, right? Just select all four, group them together. Now these will all come up with that. So you could make another for like property, blah blah blah. For you could even do this. You could say something like, you could block out the group that's added, right? So maybe even like making the size kind of deceptive um, so that you don't really know, right? That could be kind of interesting. Um, so let's just go ahead and do that and see what happens, right? So let's say like our group or something, and so okay, cool, right? So because I made it big, that's kind of like another hint. If I made it super small, then maybe I could be like, well, that would obviously be a hydroxyl group and not something really big like a sulfur group or these gluconoride groups. And the name is here or whatever, but I don't know. So you can just play around with that. Um, these might not end up being the best cards, but let's just kind of see. Okay, so I'm going to put those together now, and this will give me kind of a full sort of comprehensive view. You don't have to get this detailed, but you can do kind of as much with this as you want. I'll just show another thing that I like to do here for these. Maybe like you want to say like well, this is going to give me a hint as to what's here. So I just want to get rid of these labels, especially because we don't really have to memorize them, right? It's just showing us a general sort of scheme. So you come over here to layers, right, on the right, and you can see that you have a mask layer and a labels layer. And you can click on this eye here to show to make what's in the mask layer visible and what's in the labels layer visible, etc. And the importance of this is that you can make your own labels, right? So instead of if highly lipophilic wasn't here, right, I could put that there. So let me just do that real quick. And if you don't do this, this is going to show up as a mask. Sorry, it's missing a parentheses, but whatever. If you don't do that, move it or do the next thing that I want to do, it's going to show up as a mask, and that'll be like kind of confusing. So you want to click it and say move mask to labels, right? Move selected elements to labels, yes. And now, right, if I have the mask label selected, I actually can't select this. So that shows that it's in the labels. So I'll go over here to labels. Now I can select this. I can move it wherever I want, cover it up, blah blah blah. So like a trick you can do to just hide things in your in your diagrams is go over to labels. Let's say I want to hide the names. So I would just do something like this. Okay. These are all coming up as black because that was the previous color that I had selected. Oops. So shift to select all. There you go. And then I'm just going to make them white, right? Like the background. And they have these, they have a box. You could keep that there. I'm just a really sort of weirdly detail, like that would kind of annoy me just to be up there. So I just want to make them totally invisible. Right. So this is the fill color, and this is the outline color down here. And so you would just make this either white or no outline, right? This red dot or this red cross in the bottom. So I make them no outline, and now they're gone. See? So now what I'll do is we remember that these are both grouped together, the phases are both grouped together, and the R groups are both grouped together. So if I do, when I want to add these cards, I have two options. I can either say hide all, guess one, or hide one, guess one. Hide all, guess one is going to make it so that every time this diagram comes up, everything is hidden, right? All of these are up here, and it'll only say, okay, here's the card. The cards that you're trying to guess will just be highlighted in red. So I like to do, for the most part, I like to do hide one, guess one, unless something that isn't hidden is going to tip me off to something that's hidden. So in like a process, I think it's easier to do hide one, guess one, because you're really just trying to guess the enzyme involved in that phase, right? Or involved in putting that R group on, or what have you, right? Or in this case, if you're trying to guess the R group, you can guess by virtue of which enzyme this is, and you don't have to have the enzyme hidden in order to guess the R group that's going to come up. Okay, so I'm going to press hide one, guess one. It pops up down here that added 3 cards, and now I can actually just check those, right? So I can check those in the deck. Oh, whoops, these are going to be, sorry, I added them directly to Foundations too. So yeah, let's see. Oh boy, this might be kind of hard because there's a lot in here. So let's look. So this is just one of the cards. I don't know which one it's previewing, but I guess we'll see. Oh, okay, so it's the R group card. Right, so now you can see it kind of worked out well. The phase 2 here is kind of blocked, but it doesn't really matter. You can guess that, right? So what the point of this would be to say, okay, here it's showing me a drug, and maybe on a test it would ask me, like, what would happen to this drug in this case? So you have the CYP enzyme, right, family, and that's going to add a hydroxyl group here, right, to make this compound slightly soluble in water. And then it's like, oh, what? Okay, so then what would be added here? Well, you have this UGT and this UDP glucuronide group, and that's going to glucuronidate, right, this compound so that it has this very, very soluble, right, R group. And so you're just testing yourself there on what these are going to do. That's why you didn't want to hide them. It would make it a lot harder for yourself. Okay. Um, so that's basically it. One other thing you can kind of do that I want to cover is another trick, which is just like blanking the diagram with a PDF editor. So for something like, let's just take this will usually be for like processes. So let's see, just looking through here, there's not much, but another sort of way, I'll just use this as a kind of example here. Another sort of way you can work with diagrams is to say, let's take this. Let's say I want to use this diagram and just sort of test myself on what's going on here. So so what I'll do, because you want to edit a PDF, is download the PDF chapter, um, um, and you can go into your downloads and say, okay, chapter 6, drug metabolism. Now, there's a lot of PDF editors out there. This isn't, this is just mine. So this is not part of like the sort of workflow or process that you should think about necessarily, unless you also have this editor. It's called Drawboard PDF. Discard. So you know, there's more or less, there's better and worse ways, I think, to edit PDFs. But this is just one that I think works for me pretty well. So let me just show you what's going to happen. It's kind of hard to do without the visual. All right, so I'm going to go down and grab, remember it was this figure. Okay, so what I wanted to do was blank out things that are going on here, then ask myself to just explain the diagram, right? So this is just white background. So in this case, I have this like pen thing that I'm going to come over here, and it's going to sort of get rid of the pointer. So I'll just kind of explain what I'm doing. But I'm selecting, I'm going to select white for this color of this pen. Boom. And so however you do this, however, a lot of PDF editors will have like a sort of pen function, and you can just go directly over that, right? And just kind of get rid of it, right? You could even maybe get rid of this, this group, or this group to kind of explain what it is, or hide it, or however you want to do it. So, okay, so now here's like a sort of weird, like harder part is, let's say I wanted to just get rid of this part. You could just come over and like edit it like that. That's kind of weird to me. Um, so what I actually like to do is, this is just a really sort of specialized thing. I mean, you don't need to do this by any means, but oh wait, where is it? Oh, yeah. So take this dropper tool, and what that will do is you can select any color that you want the pen to be based on, like, whatever color you point to. And so, right, this pen is now the color of this little circle, and I'm going to change the thickness real quick just to make it smaller. And right now you can see that you have the icon still there, but the text is gone. Okay, so what you can do from there is then go ahead and take your screenshot directly to your clipboard. It's kind of out of there, but I don't think I'm really going to add this card. I just want to show how to do it. And I would say something like, so I would go to add. I would then change this card as Image-occlusion, right? I just want to make this like a basic card or a cloze card. Choose. Okay, so the text, I'm going to say Control V, right? Paste directly in there. So now I have this blanked out diagram, and I can just ask myself, um, use the following diagram to explain this, drug and metabolic process or whatever, blah, 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 right? And so that would be your question. And your sort of answer would be, well, enzyme GST blah blah blah, whatever that is, which I'm gonna put in there. Um, used to add or like reduce, right, or oxidize this sulfur group, whatever. However you wanna put it, right? And then this process happens, and this process happens, and so you can either put in the answer or in the extra field because the extra field always pops up regardless. But sometimes it's just useful to put it in the answer. Is the full diagram, right? So now you go back and you can actually just like however your specific editor works, you can just get rid of all the annotations you made, and then go ahead and copy it again. Get a screenshot, right? Let's get the source this time, just for, and then paste it right in. And now you can actually close that out with all of it, right? So you can either take this. It's a little harder. You might want to put it in extra, but you go just select all this, right? And the image is selected too. And now all that's selected, I press Control Shift C, and that generates a cloze card, right? So now this is part of what will pop up as the answer. But again, if it's just your preference, you can also just paste it right into extra, and it'll pop up below the answer as well. Okay, so let's add and then just look at it. So I'm going to search for this card here and browse, and we'll see why this is sort of useful. Use this diagram. This is a good way to search for stuff. Blah 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 blah. Okay, these are all suspended. Nope. Oh, use the following. Okay, cool. So I've selected this card. Now I'm going to preview it and see how it turns out in my deck. Okay, use the following diagram to explain this drug metabolic process. Well, I'm seeing, okay, so you have this sulfur group over here. It's like changing into something else. Oh, there's an enzyme that does that. Okay, so I'm now going to just explain this process to myself, using the enzyme GST. This is this compound, and this is this, and it transfers it to this, blah, 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 blah. And so, I can check myself and say, okay, that's glutathione, right? And, that's another kind of trick. It's a little bit longer and more intensive, but it can help in certain things such as process explanations and whatever else. So, okay, so that's that. And now a last thing I want to show is this overlapping cloze for ordered lists. So let's go into that. I'm just going to delete this because I don't need it. So yeah, to delete a card, I guess this could be somewhat important. You can either choose it and do Control Delete, or I don't know why for me this is a little more like, I don't know. So going to this drop down menu, right click, go to drop down Notes, and then Delete. Okay, so it'll show up briefly as that it was deleted, or that something was deleted. So let's go back into the Saporito deck, and so let's do this. I'm going to show how to make a process, or how to like sort of order a process by using these overlapping clozes. So we could possibly use this ferric iron reduction to You know what? Let's just show, I just want to show this given something very, very basic. So let's just say I come across a process, which isn't always going to happen. I mean, an ordered process that I want to remember. So I'm just going to do this for a general, let's just say glycolysis, right? So, um, imagining that there was a process in here that I wanted to know from start to end, some sort of ordered list, I would want to get out of this. And this is where that cloze overlapper tool, right? This add-ons. This cloze overlapper really comes into play for Anki 2.1. So you do add, and you would say, you would go up to this card type, click on it, go down. I have a bunch of these. You might not, and I need to probably get rid of these. But just to sort of show you, this is going to be in cloze. Okay, So you pick cloze overlapping. This is the default that comes with the add-on. You're going to say choose. Okay. So this is going to be really confusing looking at first, but it's actually pretty simple, at least to me. So I think so you would do title, right? Let's say steps of glycolysis, and we'll only say substrates, right? We're not going to say, let's not add enzymes. Okay. So that's going to be the title, right? That's what's going to appear. You can obviously kind of edit that however you want, bold, underline. Okay. So now, right, let's make our list. And this is where I'll show also how I like to use symbols. So I like to use arrows for these, right? You could say glucose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 6-phosphate, right? Again, arrow. And you can even do like, so yeah, so let's actually just say this, like, just to remember that this is a reversible reaction, converted into fructose 6-phosphate, right? Converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, converted. Okay, so you would take this, and the next thing you want to do is actually just go up to settings. So it's in this top right. These are going to come just automatically when you get the add-on. And so if you want a list where it gives you the previous part of the list before, and so you can kind of just jump in, right? So for instance, like it'll say glucose 6-phosphate, and then you give you a prompt for the next thing. If you want that context, you would put context before, and however many items in the list you want to come before that thing, that would be what you would put there. There are videos, by the way, just on this general tool. So that would be something you could probably look up on YouTube if you wanted more sort of help and customization with this. But the cloze prompt, right, I'll put as 1 because it's just asking you how many items you want to be asked about. Context after, I like to put 0 just because that would be kind of the same thing as just generating a list where you just close out one item. Really, you're trying to get each item as it comes up. And then when you want to build or when you want to memorize a full list and be able to gradually learn it, this is basically what you want to do. If you want to memorize a list in terms of like where things are in their specific context, then you don't need to do gradual build up and down because you're not saying, oh, I want to be able to recite this whole list. But if you want to have a gradual build up, right, to be able to understand the full list and be able to recite it, that's what you would want to do. And then I also want to say no cues for first item because I want to be able to have the title, right, steps of glycolysis or whatever it is, and then be able to say, okay, what's the very first step? So now I'm going to say okay, right, and it's generated these cards. And so you can customize them however you want. And I'll show you maybe a little thing you would do. So you can see here, it's actually just generated all these for you. And then in the last one, it's generated this full list. And so this will come up as its own card, where once you've been able to learn all of these, it'll just show you this one. And so if you get caught on a step or whatever, it won't give you the full list like it would if you just asked yourself every time to recite off a list and then had to go back and keep doing that. It'll give you that card that you're stuck on, and then eventually once you learn that, it'll be able to give you the full list again. So something you might want to do is maybe like put arrows or something, and so this is where I'll show how to use this this tool. So let's say you want to use just reversible and irreversible arrows. So this symbol tool, add-on rather, is really good, right? You can add a bunch of symbols that you don't want to like copy over directly into your cards. So let's just say we want to just put that there, and on this card, so in this card we would put that arrow, and then we want to say that, okay, this is an irreversible step. And so, we put that and blah, 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 right? So we could put that here as well. And so you can edit these, basically however you want. But I'm just kind of going through and making this thorough here. So, okay, so let's go ahead and put that. And now we've generated all of these. And we're going to add them to the deck. Okay, so now when we go to browse, we'll be able to see them as long as they come up. Okay, yep, here they are. So they're a different card type than everything else, which kind of makes it so it's these cloze overlapping. And so let's go ahead and preview. Right, so it gives this this kind of cloze where it's telling you, right, there's a list. And so if I go to the next one, they're out of order right now. So until you preview, it won't work, or until you actually review, the list function won't work as well as, but it's just, you want to preview it just to see, is it giving me what I want, right? Is it asking me the things that I'm going to want to be asked? And then eventually, again, as you learn the cards, this full card will come up. Okay. So again, there are tutorials on this specific add-on, but that's just a last thing that I like to do to customize cards that are going to be in an ordered list. So we've covered sort of image occlusion, blanking diagrams, and everything else. Now I'll just I'll start doing the cards, right? And another thing is, you don't really have to stop. Oops, sorry. You don't have to stop editing. So when let me just show this first. When I'm adding my cards to my deck, I'm going to get rid of these. One way to suspend cards is just to hit Control J, and that'll suspend those cards. Of course, I want to delete those because I don't need to remember the steps of glycolysis at this moment. So we'll press Control Delete. That'll delete all those. So now what I want to do is, instead of just unsuspending the cards in the deck that I just edited, I'm just going to go ahead and, so I selected the deck on the side here, come over here, click in this area, and then press Control A. I think it might be Command A on a Mac. That's going to select all. Then I right click and say toggle suspend, or obviously you can hit Control J. So now all these cards are unsuspended. And so that'll be what you'll want to do. You want to go through and suspend all these that are added if they're not already suspended, and then unsuspend them as they come up. And that can be fine when you want to go ahead and review. But what's going to happen is that all these subdecks are going to be given to you in the order that they were added. You might be cool with that, but for me, I just kind of like them to be randomized within the rest of the cards I'm learning. So I'll select all again, right click, change the deck, and move it over. I'm going to search for my deck, but move it over to this Foundations 2 deck that I made, right? So move cards. Now you can see they're all in Foundations 2. And when I go back into this, there's nothing here, right? So I've moved them all into this other deck. I'll go ahead and just delete this so that, so that I don't have to worry about which is the next one and which ones I've already added. And then all of those cards are in this Foundations 2 deck that I made, so that when I review them, they'll come up randomly. So let's just see that. Oops, so just go here first, right? So let me get out of all these. So you can see a ton of new cards. Study. And, a big part of editing is just editing as you do them. These are just part of the Saporito deck. But, if something comes up where you're like, oh, there's a typo, I forgot like this language, or I forgot to edit this card while I was just browsing through them, all you have to do is just go down to this edit, and it's editing, you're editing the current card, and you can just do the same things, right? You can format them differently, or, do something like that. let's see. So then they're pretty much automatically saved. You don't have to do anything. Just close it out, and it will give you that card. It will show you exactly how you edited it. You can add, um, let's just say I wanted to add a picture, right? Um, so, you could do something like uh, rare disease assumption and, add, uh, or what, sorry, let's see, open image in new tab. Let's just say I want to grab this for whatever reason. I could, it won't let me copy it, so I'll screenshot it by pressing Control Shift S. It's already copied to my clipboard, and I can just paste it here. Oops, paste, and there you go. Right now, uh, you'll have a picture that comes up with that card, right? So yeah, so basically, that's the workflow that I use. Then for the next lecture, you just do it all over again, um, and put those cards in the deck. Then obviously in the next foundations, you make a new deck, and just keep going like that. So feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to timestamp the video so that you can go back to things. But yeah, good luck.